wants BP's North Sea oil business? Welcome. My name's Karen Newton. I am a business and wealth strategist, and I get rid of the noise that is out there and tell you how I'm interpreting what's happening globally, affecting economies. In the news this week was that BP had made the decision to sell its North Sea business. And instantly I saw headlines in papers about shutting down the drilling, closing assets off, making people redundant. There was all sorts of scaremongering going on. BP's decision to sell the North Sea business is actually a strategic capital allocation rather than ending North Sea production. They're just moving their capital to where it's most likely to give them a better return. Now, the UK government has, over recent years, put penalties and more taxes and all sorts of things onto companies operating in the North Sea. And so this is just a strategic decision by BP to make sure that it gets a better return on its capital. So selling a business is actually totally different to closing it down. And from everything that I've been able to see, BP are selling this as a going concern. So they want it operating. They are going to want to see it making a profit, being a sound business, so that they can sell the asset to other people who want to take it on. Now, one of the areas that I've looked at, if you have a look at my blog this week, it's karennewton.co.uk/blog, then you will see I've written a lot about the benefits of certain countries buying or not buying and what that actually means for us. So some of the countries that I have been looking at, UK operators. Now, there are quite a few UK operators out there. Harbour Energy, Ithaca Energy, Enquest, Serica Energy, they all operate in the North Sea. They have successful businesses and they could well be interested in buying BP's operation. And if one of these companies becomes the successful bidder for the business, that would suggest that there is confidence in the North Sea resources and many profitable years ahead, because nobody's going to buy something that's going to start losing money in a week or 2 weeks' time. So it's going to be interesting to see how many of the UK operators are in there looking at BP's business. Now, Norwegian companies also operate well in the North Sea. Norway has its own area that it works, and it may be interested in getting into the BP market. Companies that I'm thinking of there are Equinor. They already have extensive operations across the North Sea. Again, if a Norwegian buyer takes on BP's business, that would indicate confidence, and that would indicate confidence from one of the world's most experienced offshore energy producers. Europe. Now, the North Sea has never been solely a British story. It has long been one of Europe's most important energy regions, with companies from across the continent investing in offshore exploration, production, and infrastructure. And one of the companies that comes to mind here is French giant Total Energies. That already has a significant presence in the UK continental shelf. And they may look at this as an opportunity to expand their resources. Again, you've got Italy's Eni, or Eni, depending on how good your Italian is. And mine's not that fantastic. And they also have extensive offshore experience, and they may want to add more to their portfolio. Spain's Repsol. Now, Repsol is quite an interesting one because I live in Spain, and I live in the Cartagena region of Spain. Repsol has a energy plant here. It takes in 25 different types of oil and refines it. It also deals with biogas and green energy. So Repsol may look at that to secure more resources coming into their plant here in Spain. And again, that maintains an interest for Europe across the North Sea. One of the other, well, let's talk about some of the other areas. The United States. Now, the United States has been pretty aggressive saying to drill in the North Sea and to take as much as they can out of there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see someone from the United States, a company from the United States, showing interest in the North Sea. However, saying that, a lot of the American companies, the major producers, they've they're increasingly focused on the Permian Basin, Guyana, and Brazil. So they may not have that interest, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're not looking at it. Now, the Middle East is quite interesting because we all assume the Middle East has got all this oil everywhere, but they have increasingly been investing internationally. And for them, acquiring product assets is not simply about increasing revenue, it's about diversification and strengthening their global supply chains and securing stable long-term production in politically reliable regions. We all know that the Middle East does tend to be unstable, and that can have drastic effects on what is happening with oil and gas resources. Now, another one that I have actually thrown in here is China. Now, the reason that I've included China is that there's been a lot of work between the UK and China in building better economic relationships. Now, China also just got approval for their super embassy that they are wanting to build in London. It did go to the High Court, and the High Court approved it. So China is investing into the UK, and oil may be something that it looks at to invest more into the UK. I'm not saying they will, but it's a long shot. But with China and the decisions that China makes, you never know what they are likely to do. The only thing with China is it is politically sensitive if China is buying assets, and that kind of foreign investment does need a political decision to allow them to invest. So it wouldn't be a straightforward investment. That's why I've got them as a long shot. But it's interesting to see how many regions could be interested in getting North Sea oil resources. So one of the things that has come out, another angle to look at what has happened with BP's decision around selling, is not necessarily about oil. It's about capital. And Every pound invested in a project is a pound that cannot be invested elsewhere. So BP's decision, based on capital and being able to generate higher returns, is not a judgment on what is happening in the North Sea. It is actually a strategic allocation of capital. So when you see all these headlines out there, they are out there scaremongering because it is purely a capital investment decision. Now, if I read between the lines here, and my interpretation or what I am looking at doesn't actually come forward, and we find that nobody wants BP's North Sea business, now that is going to be a totally different story. And if we've got several companies competing, that tells us something else about how valuable the North Sea still remains. So the sale itself isn't the headline. The headline should be, who wants BP's North Sea business? And that will give us a true indication of what is happening in the market. If you want more of my interpretations, where I look at headlines, you can find the blogs on my website, karennewton.co.uk/blog, or you can subscribe to Strategic Investor. The link is in the notes or the description, and you'll be able to sign up for Strategic Investor. Strategic Investor comes out once a month, and it's my interpretation of, when I've looked at the headlines, where I see the markets are actually going. So thanks for listening. Let's get rid of the frantic, the unreliable, the scaremongering, the headlines that are out there. Get rid of all that noise and just get down to what is a financial, a political, or an economic decision. Thanks for listening.
Disclaimer. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as financial, investment, legal, or tax advice and should not be construed as such. I am not a licensed financial advisor, and the strategies discussed are based on personal experience and general market knowledge. Always do your own research and consider your individual financial goals, risk tolerance, and personal circumstances before making any investment decisions. I strongly recommend that you consult with a qualified financial advisor or licensed professional before acting on any information discussed in this podcast. Investing involves risk, and past performance is not indicative of future results. By listening to this podcast, you agree that the host and associated entities are not responsible for any losses or damages arising from the use of this content.